Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to go ahead. If I stand behind the podium, I will literally explode. I'm highly caffeinated. I apologize for that, but I think it'll be to the benefit for all of us. Thank you for spending your afternoon. This is the last talk of the day, from what I understand, before the Hackfest, the drinking and other party stuff going on. So thank you for spending it with me. I do appreciate it. This is a little bit about me. I am a SANS instructor, a Nova hacker. Yeah, Nova hackers, anybody out there? Oh, look at all you. Good. So I'm a Nova hacker. I am also somebody that really enjoys doing open source intelligence on other people. Some people refer to this as stalking. I prefer to call it open source investigations. I'm a backpacker. I love the Appalachian Trail as well. This talk is not a highly technical talk. It's more of a talk to get people understanding what the risks of online activity are. Okay? We're going to go through some web application stuff. And of course, I need to throw this up there. I am representing myself, Micah Hoffman, not my employers, so my words are my own. And so, I have a question for you. I'm going to do a little survey and find out what your comfort level is with information on the internet. Okay? So, let's find out what information you're uncomfortable with people in the world knowing. So, on the internet, would you be uncomfortable if other people knew your name, your address, and your phone number? Just raise your hand if you're uncomfortable with people knowing that. Okay, some people out there, that's cool. You know, there is the white pages and phone books and stuff. We used to get this huge book in the mail. For those of you that are older, you remember the white pages. That's out there. That's kind of public information. That's stuff we can't control. We're going to talk more about that later in the talk. But what about where you work? Now, in this area, some people are not allowed to have other people know where they work, right? Just raise your hand if you're one of those people. It's getting later in the day. You might have gotten somebody. But yeah, I mean, your places of work. Some places don't want you telling where you work. And so, especially if you're an incident responder or defender, you don't want people to know that you're a defender for a certain company because you might get targeted. Your personal account might get targeted. Let's take another step into the creepy. What if people on the internet had pictures of your kids, your pets, your family? Would that freak out some people? I know this is starting to get into that quasi area. And what about had pictures or videos inside your house? Now that's starting to get freaky, right? Okay. Well, up until recently, I stopped here. But we do have another thing that's out there, and I think some of you know about the data breaches I'm talking about. We'll get to that in just a second, but if somebody knew this, I think people would really have some problems, right? If they could tie that back to you, that'd be embarrassing. When we sign up for accounts on the internet, when we sign up for Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, so we have the option of securing that data. We have the option of making that data private or public for the whole world to see. By default, it usually is public, right? We have to take action to make it private. And you know what? If I have to authenticate to a website in order to post data, I expect that the service provider does something to protect my data. Make sure that only I or the people that I want, the people in my circles or my groups or my friends or whatever, only they can see the stuff that I want them to see. I don't want them sharing it with the entire world. Otherwise, I just tweet it. So here's a question. How does our data get divulged to the entire world? Well, there's a couple of different ways. And the first way, which you're probably very familiar with, is companies have created a business model where my data becomes their price point. It provides money for their company. This is something that happens. Radio Shack went into bankruptcy. They're like, damn, what do we have? Resistors, LEDs? Oh, we have this huge customer list with all of the things that Micah likes to buy. How about somebody buy this? Nobody wanted it, but that was a thing that they could have sold. All right, what about this stuff? People stealing our data all the time now. We seem to have this, I don't know if you remember a number of years ago, there used to be this hacker safe badge. I know it's still out there on some websites. And you see it's like hacker safe. No one can hack this site. okay, that's cool. Now it's almost like I expect to see right next to that is, we've been hacked 3 times. Yeah! You know, because it's like a badge of honor now to be hacked, to have your data so important that hackers have targeted you, broken into the systems, and then spread all of the data throughout the internet. In fact, some of the breaches and some of the information that's out there is highly personal information that nobody expected that it ever got out there on the internet, right? Hey, there's a website out there for people that want to cheat on their spouses. Now, there are reasons why people did this. I read some of the comments on some of the things, and there are legitimate reasons. But that stuff is personal. It is kind of private. But it gets out there on the internet. And then we have the other category, which is the oops category, where companies, by mistake, by accident, have divulged our data or bits of our data to the rest of the world. And what I want to do is go through an example of this with you to show you that sometimes these vulnerabilities are still out there. And this is how we're tying in the open source intelligence with the web. So one day, I went for a bicycle ride with one of my friends. And no, I wasn't in Paris or anything like that, but that was a good picture of bicycle riders. So after the ride, she sent me an email and said, hey, Micah, just wanted you to know, I used this cool app called Strava. And what Strava does is it was running on my phone, and it created a geographical map of where we rode, and you can access it by just clicking this link. And as a security researcher, what do? I click links. So I clicked it. Don't you guys? So I clicked it, and what did I see? I saw this. I was like, oh, this is cool. That's exactly where we rode. And here's a map, and there's how far we went. Yeah, 19.2 miles. That's cool. Wait a second. I looked at the URL, and the URL looked something like this. It was like, wait, I didn't have to authenticate to get at this data. I clicked the link. I went to this site, which has an integer on the end. So I started thinking, and I know that some of you are thinking the same thing. I see your smiles. So it's like, well, if I could just get to my event by clicking on one number, what would happen if I incremented that number or decremented it? And sure enough, if I went ahead and did that, I found that I got different events, different activities. Oh, this is probably not something that they wanted to do. So I looked in the page code a little bit, and I saw that not only could I do this with activities, but I could do this with athletes as well. So here, I have 2 different athletes, and bada bing, I have Zach and Eric. Whoa, that's pretty cool. Well, if there's athletes and activities, is there other stuff in the code? So I went to Strava webpage, and I looked at it. And if you right-click on the page, you can look at the source code of the page. Looking at the source code, now I put in these colored boxes. If you do the source code, you're not going to see the boxes, but the data's there. I had one person come up afterwards like, I see it on my phone, but I don't see any boxes. Yeah, that's magic of PowerPoint. So I saw this data. I was like, wow, there's actually a ton of data that I didn't have to authenticate to get that is being disclosed with every page that's out there. Now, what Strava does is it may or may not present this to you in the web browser. Doesn't mean that you can't see it. Doesn't mean that it's not being transmitted. It's just you don't see it. So I was like, well, I'm a CISSP, and so I'm like, I have to do the right thing, you know, that badge of honor. And I said, Strava, you know, I don't use your application, but I saw this vulnerability. I wanted you to know that you're using integers. It's really easy to find all this data. Bad people could do bad things with this. And I want you to know there's a good way to change this. And Strava wrote back and said, well, thank you very much for your email. We think that we're doing okay, but thanks very much. No, we don't have to change anything. It's like, well, wait a second. So I can do all these things, and you don't think that we should change. So I said to him, I was like, well, if you don't think this is a problem, would you mind if I did a talk on this? And they were like, yeah, you could do a talk, thanks. You know, we have security settings where people can restrict certain information. They can throw that privacy bit, so we're cool with you making a talk about this. And I thought to myself, So I was like, yeah, okay, game on. Let's make a talk about this. So let's take a quick look at the privacy bit that you throw on the Strava website. It's a master switch. It's on or it's off. Who thinks that it's off by default? Yeah, you're public. Your data's public. So if you throw this master switch to protect your data, your name will be anonymized. Now, anonymizing your name means just giving the first initial of your last name, not the whole name. That's anonymous. And then only Strava athletes that you approve can follow you. And I like the last one here. Only approved followers can see and download your activities. Whew, boy, am I glad of that. So I went to Google and I typed in strava.com/activities. Google knows about 25 million of these activities. Now, I'm not sure about this, but if we go one slide back, I'm not sure I approved Google to go ahead and harvest all my data. So since Google had all of this data, I thought Strava must be okay with me grabbing all that data. Yeah. So how can I get it? And I didn't grab all the data. I must admit, Verizon would probably have a problem with my bandwidth while I'm sucking it all down. So if we look at the web page itself, we again go into the source code, and we can see that certain fields are here, right? Activity ID, 80,001. Activity type, ride. These things are easily parsed out using a script, Python, Perl, Ruby, whatever you want to do. I'm a web guy, so I use a web-based tool, or a tool for looking at websites. That tool that I used is called Burp Suite. And what we can do with the pro version of Burp Suite is we can tell it that we want to change one section of a request. All right? So this is activities. I want to change this number from 80,000. And here's what I want you to do, Burp. Burp Suite, I want you to change it, pick a random number between 80,000 and 240 million. Because at the time that I wrote this, there were over 240 million activities out there on the internet. Okay. I told Burp Suite to go ahead and grab 200,000 events, make 200,000 requests. My thought was I could create a master dictionary. See, I couldn't go ahead and say, just give me all of John Doe's rides. That's not how this vulnerability will work. But what I can do is I can request 200,000 activities and hope that I get multiple activities from the same person. So I went ahead and did that. Now, I want this to pull out certain pieces of information. Sorry if this is getting technical. This is as technical as the talk gets. So I tell it, hey, in this area, I want to go ahead and pull that information and put it into a column, and I do that for a whole bunch of different sections. Then I hit the go button, and I get this, which is an Excel spreadsheet with over 800,000 entries. Excellent. So I did it multiple times. I did the 200,000 multiple times, and then there were some overlaps and some errors and stuff, but over time I got over 800,000 entries. Whew! This is what they look like. So I have what type, I have the athlete ID, the name, gender, and the profile, which we'll come back to. So putting on my attacker hat, I thought, what could I do with this data? If somebody were to harvest all of these records from Strava, what would they do? And the answer that I came up with was threefold. One, find patterns of behavior. If I have that description field that shows your description for the ride, or I'm not saying that any of you use Strava, but I was in California and I was giving this talk, and I was thinking, well, wait, Strava's out here in California. Excuse me, does anybody work at Strava? No, good. Scared me for a second. I was going to end up in handcuffs or something. One, find patterns. Could I find people going to and from work, to and from home? That might be interesting. Could I find the real person? You know, Strava anonymizes the name. If they anonymize the name, does that really provide you protection? And then I just decided to look at the data and see what's there. Let the data drive what I'm looking for and what my analysis is. Let's take a step back. Open source intelligence, or OSINT, or OSINT. is really just doing things that we do on a normal basis. You want to research a company to invest in. You want to research a school, a new partner, a friend, somebody else that you've met on the internet or something. You Google it or DuckDuckGo it or something like that. That's open source investigation, seeing what the information out there that's on the internet provides about something. The most important part of this is the analyze. Getting the information is really easy. Anybody can Google. It's what you glean out of it that's so important. What can people do with it? Well, there's a ton of things that they can do, but these are just my top 5 things. Identity theft. If I can find out enough information about you, maybe I can find what school you went to or the name of your first pet or your favorite teacher. I don't know. People put crazy things in their blogs and other things on their Facebook pages and YouTubes. Could I, since I have geographic information about where you do your rides or your runs or your walks, maybe somebody could stalk you or wait for you as you walk around the lake and then physically assault somebody? That could happen. Social engineering. Social engineering is all about gaining somebody's trust, right? It's me gaining your trust and then exploiting that trust to some end. And we'll show you that a little bit later on, how easy it is in certain situations to do that. With the disclosure of the Ashley Madison and the adult friend finder information and even OPM data, how about extortion and espionage? Those are some prime things that people can do with this. And then, of course, dating. Now, I've been out of the dating market for a long time, but I am told that one of the first things that happens now when you meet somebody is you look up what their online profile is. If that's your case, if that's a case for somebody out in the audience, I'm going to show you a really easy way to do that very quickly. That's safe. That's safe. So let's go back to those questions that I asked and take a look at the Strava data, all right? So let's see if we can find repeated activities by the same people in the Strava data. What I found was that you don't even have to go to Strava. Google knows about these things already. I was like, all right, well, if I started doing that, that would be, that's bad enough. But let's go to my data, and I did find that, this is my Excel spreadsheet, I did find that, yeah, we found Aaron Turner went to work, and Alex H., he went to work, and this is what some of it looks like. Here we have Aaron Turner commuting to work. He started here, he finished there, lives in Sydney, Australia. Well, that's pretty cool. The interesting thing about Strava is that the longer the ride, the less detail is shown on the map. So I started looking at that going, well, you know what? I want to find something where somebody did a short ride or a short walk or short run so that I can see street names. Because if I can see street names and I can see where you started and where you ended, I might be able to find out where you live or where you work. So let's move to number 2, right? Can I find the information just using Strava and open source intelligence about where the person would live? Enter Dan. Now, Dan likes to take walks. Dan walked 1.4 miles. He lives over there in Sunnyvale, California, and on 2 different dates, as you can see here. Let me go back. On Wednesday in December, he went and he started his walk here near Hebrides Way on Flamingo Drive or Flamingo Street, and he walked around this park and back to there. Okay. Residential area, I make an assumption. Doing penetration testing, doing open source intelligence, we make assumptions, educated guesses, and then we refine them based upon the information we get back. So I'm going to make a guess that he lives somewhere around that area. So the next thing I do is I look for corroborating evidence. Okay, in October, he again started in that same area around Flamingo, and he ended in the same area. So he probably walked out of his house, started his phone, walked his dog, came back, stopped his phone, tracked it, put it on Strava, expected Strava to protect him because he threw that bit. See that? They've anonymized his name. Sunnyvale has a population, last time I checked, of 147,000 people. So let's see if we can find Dan S. in 147,000 people. First thing we do is we go to the Googles. Google Map knows everything, right? So Google, I put a pin here. That tells me that that house is 1501 Flamingo Way. Okay, Makes no difference to me. I'm going to go ahead and take that, put Dan's first name in 1501 Flamingo Way, Sunnyvale, California, and I get this. Now, this is an interesting piece of data because Dan didn't put this on the internet. This is that information that our governments or other people put on the internet about us because there's freedom of information. And this stuff is public information. We cannot control this. And as an open source investigator, I love it. Because what I can do is I can take that information, go to the details of it, and I see that, oh my God, his name was anonymized. His full name is Daniel Sato, and there's his wife's name too. And they didn't live at 1501, they lived at 1507. The land value is $29,000. You see where I'm going with this. Because I can take this information, go to whitepages.com, get his phone number, look at his house, and then, with the magic of Google Street View, we can see what his house looks like. And that's all within 5 minutes without me leaving my chair. So does the Strava privacy bit, where it anonymizes your last name, does that work? Oh, hell no. No. So what is really the point of this? Well, with Google Street View and with all of the other information that we have out there on the internet, it's really easy for people to do reconnaissance about you or about the places you walk or the places that you ride your bike. When I first started giving this talk in February of this past year, I hypothesized, I said, hey, if somebody were to do this, and see where you started and ended your ride, maybe they could use Google Street View and see where, if there's some bushes around that area where you usually start your ride, and then they could hide there and they could assault you. And people were like, yeah, Micah, that's funny. But what's happened since then is that there have been attacks. People have followed people on Strava or looked for those patterns, met them, and what they've done is they've actually broken into their cars while the person's out on their 28-mile ride somewhere. The other person just waits for him, the attacker waits for him, breaks into their cars, and they've got time, right? Because they know that the person's out on a bike ride. Dude comes back from his ride, he's like, oh my God, how did they know I was here? It's on Strava. There are other activity trackers out there. And I'm not going to make this talk about going through and telling you which is the best ones, Fitbit, but I have done a little bit of research. And what I found overwhelmingly is that the one that has allows you to control the most amount of information that you disclose is Fitbit. They have very granular controls that can allow you to hide a lot of your information. But if you don't use them, there are still ways to get at this. And this goes into some other ways that we work on the internet now. Okay? This is Janna. Janna is a woman on the internet, and she has protected her Fitbit profile. And we can tell that because we see that her mood is private, her allergies are private, and even today is Tuesday. Whatever. So here's Janna. And Janna, for those of you in the back, she's a 40-year-old woman from Saline, Michigan. Saline, Michigan has 9,000 people in it as of 2013. What we're going to do is we're going to exploit another open source web application vulnerability to find Janna. Because if I did the exact same thing again, you guys would probably throw stuff at me. And those badges will hurt me if you throw it. As an open source intelligence investigator, one of the best tools I have is my brain. I have to be observant and I have to record stuff and look at the differences in the data. For instance, her name's Janna with a J, right? If we look down here, we see Janna, Z-H-A-N-A. That's weird. Something I'd log. Just put it in the back of my mind. Let's take a look here. One of the things that some sites don't allow you to make private are your pictures. For instance, on Facebook, last time I checked, if you went ahead and threw all of those privacy settings to protect all of your information so that only your friends can see your stuff, the one thing that you have no control over are any of your profile pictures that you've put up for your profile. So if I had a profile picture of myself surfboarding at the beach one time, anybody that knows stumbles across my profile, even though I've made everything private, they can still see that. And they can see the comments and who made those comments on that picture. So same thing here. Janna has gone ahead and created some pictures here. We have our picture here. If you didn't know it, in Google Chrome, you can right-click on a picture and search the image on Google. In Firefox, you can do this with a plugin. And what we do is when we look at Google for that image, Google will pull up all the pages that it knows about where it sees that image or one like it. Luckily for us, Janna has used that image on other sites. Now, this goes into the human behavior part of the talk. We as people sometimes want others to find us across our multiple social media accounts, right? I mean, I want you to come to my Instagram account and my Twitter account, and so to do that, I have to have some kind of tie-in. Yeah, I might use my hacker name, my web breacher name. That's cool. But what if you just saw a picture of me? Oh, that's Micah. Yeah, okay. That's his account because I see that. As an open source intelligence gatherer, I can exploit that because this picture from her Fitbit now appears on Google+. And look, it appears in 2 different accounts on Google+. Why would it appear in 2 different accounts? Anybody? Yeah, they friended her, or in Google's terminology, they put her in a circle. So there is some kind of relationship between Oleg Tukin and Janna Mishenkova. Oh, we have her last name now. Nice. Let's take a look at this. If we now Google Janna Mishenkova from Saline, Michigan, we see her LinkedIn page, we see more information about Oleg, and since the goal of this is to find where they live and all, I'd go ahead and take Oleg's information, put it in here to whitepages.com. I get his age, his phone number, this, and at the bottom, that there is some kind of relationship between Janna Tukin and Janna Mishenkova. So my thought is that maybe Janna Mishenkova is really Janna Tukin, and these people are married or something like that. And all of this kind of goes together, and you build that open source intelligence profile. So if I can get name and address and zip code, and name and address and phone number and stuff, how far down the rabbit hole can we go? How bad can it be? What can people really find about us? Before we get into that and answer that question, we share data on the internet. And we as Americans, or people in the United States, I'll say, we share a lot of data on the internet. And that's okay. What we think, though, is that when I give LinkedIn a little bit about me, and I give Facebook a little bit about me, when I give Instagram a little bit about me, and Tumblr a little bit about me, nobody ever is going to go through the work of tying all those accounts together and creating a whole profile about me. So in some situations, one bird is no big deal. But when I put a whole bunch together, we have a problem, right? So aggregating all the information about you together can really make a compelling argument and can really put us at risk depending upon how much we share. There's an extreme version of people that are out there on the internet. I call them oversharers. What oversharers do is they think that the internet, the public-facing internet, is their personal diary. These are the people that you see taking pictures before, during, and after their meals because they want you to see them digesting the food as it's being eaten. These are the people that are location tracking themselves in 5 different applications because they want everybody to see who they are and what they're doing. There's a problem with that. Because not everybody in this world, and I'll be very honest with you, not everybody in this world is a good person. There are bad people out there. Let's see how a bad person would go about doing this. So I wanted to find somebody on Fitbit. So what did I do? I typed in, anyone want to be friends? And there are people out there. Now, okay, this is a very Google-centric talk, I know. So I used the other search engine, DuckDuckGo. And I typed in, I need some Fitbit friends. There are people out there whose basic needs of belonging to a group are not being met. Maybe they're isolated in some part of the country or some part of the world where they don't have friends or I don't know what. But there's a guy named Alfred Adler who was a psychologist around the same time as Sigmund Freud. And he proposed that people have an overwhelming need to belong to groups. for people to belong and want them and need their input and stuff. And when people don't have those needs met, they reach out for them. So these are people that are saying, hey, I got a Fitbit, I got a tracker. You want to be my friend? I have no idea who you are, but maybe you can come support me. And that sounds a little funny, but it's the case. And so we can exploit that. Sorry, that sounds weird. We can exploit that by visiting some of these web pages. So this is sparkpeople.com, which is a site that's a meta site for people that want to lose weight, people that want to exercise and receive support in their journey to get to be more fit, etc. Let's take a look at PBJ Mommy right here, all right? Just a person that I found here. Here's her Fitbit user. Now, again, we could go to Fitbit and do all the other things that I did with Janna and stuff, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to follow what she's opening up to us here. So PBJ Mama on the Spark People website, this is her profile. Okay, you know, a little bit of blog there, that's cool. Let's look at what she puts on her profile section. Oh, we have when she's a member, here her dreams. She wants to be a great mommy, sister, and friend. Now think about this. Remember social engineering? Social engineering, we learn about people, we research a person, and then we exploit that. Wouldn't it be neat to know what's driving a person? What that person really wants to do and be in life? It's being given away right here. All you have to do is look for it. My program, here's what she does to stay fit. No, there's personal information here. This is where she lives in Camrose, Canada, her Facebook page, and a link to her YouTube site. Now, as an oversharer, Trisha is an avid vlogger, video blogger. She makes these videos of herself in her home, and you remember back to one of the first questions I asked you? Well, who would be freaked out if I had pictures inside their home? Well, when Trisha does some of her videoing, she takes her phone and she goes like this, right? She's like this, and she's walking around her house and she's videoing herself, talking about her weight loss and all these struggles that she's having and all. As a person that's doing open source intelligence gathering, what I pay attention to is not her face, but I look behind her in the pictures. I look for what furniture does she have? Does she have little kid toys? What kind of socioeconomic guesses can I make about her lifestyle? Does she have an alarm system on the wall? In some cases, she gives me information. Now, let's talk about social engineering, right? I need to get your trust to get you to do something bad. If she's holding her cell phone up to the screen, and I can tell that she's got the Rogers cell phone carrier, how easy would it be for me to call her up going, hi, Trisha? Yeah, this is Mike Hoffman. I'm calling from Rogers Cell Phone Company. We have a problem. Your cell phone is sending out malware. Can you please, yeah, it's a BlackBerry, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I need you to visit this website. It's one of our support sites. It's a tiny URL. Just go ahead and click on it, click past all the banners, and install the malware that's there. Exploiting trust. So Trisha, of course, we can find her address, we can find her phone number, we can find out what her house looks like and do all the physical stalking things. In fact, Trisha is a very prolific person that wants all of her information to be out there, so her LinkedIn page has where she works. There's even a bio on that page about her. If you didn't have enough information about her, here's even more to be able to social engineer her, steal her identity, etc. In fact, she even has a fax number in case you need to fax her. Facebook, hopes, dreams, what she likes. What if I sent her a Cake Boss something something with an embedded USB stick or something that recorded all of the conversations in her house? I mean, the opportunities here are really limited by my imagination. So if Trisha was a person that I was interested in building a profile on, I've got a lot of things that I have on her, right? In fact, anybody in the world has a lot of information about Trisha. I would argue a lot more information than they should. If I just did this as a Google talk, you probably would throw things at me and the badges are sharp. So let's go beyond it. We talked about taking those individual pieces of where you've logged in and where you have accounts and putting them all together. I like putting them together in a tool called a mind map. Now, this is a free technology that's out there. At the end, I have a link to one of the people that, now, one of the words are hard. One moment. So, as I was saying, mind maps are free. This is a Java-based tool. And Xmind and FreeMind, and there's a link at the end with a URL. And they are free software. It's really neat to be able to put things together and see relationships, see the links between stuff. And as we can see, when I put the information about Trisha up here, the detailed information from the pictures to where she works to other information about her, it really makes an interesting, compelling case about her. In fact, one of the things that I really like doing when I do open source intelligence gathering is focus on the usernames that people use, because we as people want others to find us. If you want to find me on Twitter, you go to WebBreacher. If you want to find me on GitHub, WebBreacher. It's real easy. We use the same usernames across multiple sites, right? What if I could exploit that too? Let's do that. So enter Recon-ng. Now, Recon-ng is a free Python tool that Tim Tomes, Landmaster53, created. It's a framework that allows people to create modules. I wrote a module, and my module, what it does is it goes out, it takes, well, let's take a look at this. What it does is it will take usernames, and it will talk to over 180 different websites, 190 different websites, and it'll say, hey, do you have this username? Do you have a user by this username? Oh, you do? Okay, cool, I'm going to record that. Do you have this username? And it goes out and makes those calls, and it's very fast, unless you're on a dial-up modem, but it's very, very fast in general. I can do 3 user IDs across 190 sites in 30 seconds. And you know what? This is what it looks like. I do have to warn you. When I created the profiler module, I thought, you know, what are some cool sites out there? And I thought about Instagram and Image Shack and stuff, and I found this I am pregnant. Wouldn't that be interesting to know if your spouse, the person you're dating or whatever, the person that you're researching, if they had an account here, or they had an account on Insane Journal. I don't even know what that is, but it's in there. And so what it looks like when it comes back is this. Hey, this username was found on that server, and here's the URL where you can go and do the research and see what's on that page. Now, are there false positives? Yeah. Missy, Trishy, Mrs., no, I can't even say that one, PBJ Mommy could be used by anybody in the world. So it's up to you or me or whoever's doing the research to go and see, oh, is this really my target? But does this get you a lot of places faster? Does it make your job of visiting all these different sites easier? Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. I do have to warn you that some of the websites that are out here, you can see that I've classified them as social or shopping, whatever. I thought about what sites I should put in here. So I put the normal ones in like that. But I also thought about, well, if I'm going to do research on somebody, might I want to know if the person has a site has a username or user account on a pornographic website or a site that has some kind of sexual fetish or something like that. And so the tool will go out and try to visit some of these other sites. So if you're using it at work and your firewall blocks access to certain pornographic websites, and then, or you're using it at home and mom or dad is monitoring what sites people go to, make sure you tell them, hey, it's just Recon-ng. It's okay. So, all right, so we've stalked people, but I decided to answer question number 3 and see, just looking at those 800,000 records, look at the descriptions and see if there was anything that kind of popped out at me. And this is the fun thing. I like doing this. I love looking for patterns in data. And what I found overall was that there was one word that kept coming back. It was patrol. 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 I was like, what is this patrol thing and why are all these entries? So I visited one of them. This is the Clever Patrol on 24/5/14, Tilbury B. They've used the privacy bit. And in London, England. Okay, cool. And the person walked, well, it looks like they walked out and then they walked back. Well, that's interesting. So Strava doesn't allow you to zoom in, and that sucks. But since we know that it's London, England, and we're looking for this little piece right here, what we can do is go over to Google Maps and do the research ourselves. So if we zoom in on that, on the real Google Maps, we look for that feature, which is a pretty prominent feature. And then we turn on the satellite view. We see that it's a power substation, an electrical power substation. In fact, it's the Tilbury B power substation. So somebody was lazy, and they thought it was to their benefit to have their security guard start the Strava application, walk the patrol path that they're doing to protect the Tilbury B power substation, and then clock off, and then log on the website that they walked that route. And that's probably to show that, yes, this security guard did their nightly rounds. And Strava isn't protecting that information, right? Anybody in the world can see it. In fact, if we look at some other ones, Barking Sub, again in UK, here we know that the people walking were Dominique and Alan. Would that be helpful if you're trying to do some social engineering of whatever they're protecting? Well, what are they protecting? See, the Ripple Nature Reserve? Oh, cool, they're protecting animals. No, it's a substation again. So Dominic and Alan are out on their nightly walk, and we know that because here we know that it was done at 4:25 a.m. Now, of course, I have multiple of these, and I see that every day at 4:25 a.m. they go on this nightly walk. So I call up the company that's responsible for this. I'm like, hey, Dominic and Alan are out on their patrol. They want me to have access to the facility, so I'm just going to show up at the front gate. You okay with that? Yeah, he knows Dominic and Alan. Yeah, okay, sure, come on in. Could I do it? Maybe. But the point is that this information is out there on the internet and it's not being protected. In fact, it's not just the substations. We have Britvic soft drinks. We have tons of these. And if we do this, we look and they walked around this place near the Chelmsford Cemetery. The Chelmsford Cemetery is a really prominent feature. And if we look, there's kind of a boxy area right here. Oh, wow. Look at that. It's a building. And if we zoom in there, do the street view, we see it's a soft drink company. We see how high their fence is. We see there's barbed wire. So as an attacker, from the comfort of my living room, I can now do physical reconnaissance on my target. And this is why in a penetration test, in a red team activity, you never ever skip the reconnaissance phase, because you never know what you're going to see. Well, it wasn't just patrols and other things that I saw in the data. There were some things that I just couldn't explain. For instance, now I'm a person that's never been hunting in my life, okay? If you go on a birdless bird hunt, isn't that just a walk? And if that's the case, I have no idea what this is. The only thing I can figure is he's either a South Park aficionado, or after going 92 miles and with a suffer score of 232, it's in red, so it's got to be hard. He was like hallucinating. He's like, hairy legs and chocolate salty balls. Post. Yeah, that was going to be good. What's that? California, that's right. We expect that. So let me turn the camera towards you all. If somebody in this room were to create a social media profile or an internet profile on you, your kids, your spouses, because let's think about this. You all are security people, okay? Or married to a security person. You all know to protect your Facebook. You all know to throw that security bit when possible, right? Well, don't raise your hands. You all know that. I'll just accept that. But if I want information about you, I'm probably going to go ahead and do that open source intelligence gathering effort. I will look for the public documents with your spouse, your roommate, your son, your daughter, your parents, and I'll try to access your information that way. At work, one of my coworkers came to me and said, Micah, I know you do these open source intelligence things. I bet you can't find anything about me. I I said, really? You want to do this? And he's like, yeah. So I was like, okay, I'll bet I can. So I take his name and I put it into the Googles and I type it and I'm looking at the results that come back. And I start paging up, and he's like, dude, you're already missing things. Me personally, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the data about him that he can't prevent being posted. You know, the church bulletin that's put out every month that says, oh, thank you to John Smith for donating or for being on our refreshments list. Or if he went for a run somewhere in Montgomery County where I live, when you do the Montgomery County Roadrunners things, it publishes your full first and last name, your age, your gender, and your time up there, because you got to know where you fit within the people of your age range and all, and to see if you won. So all that's out there and you have no control over it. So I'm looking for that. And sure enough, I find something about, you know, a land valuation thing or a taxes thing. And I click on that. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm finding out information about you. And it came up with his name and his wife's name. He goes, yeah, so what are you going to do? So I took his wife's name and I put it in Facebook, and her account was not protected at all. And I saw pictures of, because she will take pictures of him, right? Yeah. So I was like, well, let me just find out your Facebook account by going in through your wife's unprotected account. And now I have pictures of your kids and your house and you. And oh, look, now since I've got you, now I can see all of your friends. So it's easy. If somebody were to do this, now, none of the things that I did in here was proprietary. You all can go home or go into the next room and download Recon-ng and download Google. Well, you don't have to download it. But I mean, you could use Google or DuckDuckGo to do these things. These are easy things. The question is are people already doing that about us? The last talk that was here, and G. Mark's talk, the keynote, you know, it all talks about credit card theft and stealing identities and stuff like that. Well, what if you take a target breach or an OPM breach and some basic open source intelligence? If we can do that, we have a lot of information. So here's some just overall tips, and I know this is kind of a cop-out because this won't ever fix the problem. The only thing that can fix the problem is you. You telling your kids or your wives or whatever, hey, go ahead and tighten that down. You don't need to share everything. Do you really need to take pictures of us inside of our house? All of that. Think about this from the attacker perspective. You got to limit what you post. Now, that doesn't work for people. If you're a millennial, if you're somebody that you know, my son is now on the Facebooks and stuff, and you know, he's liking things because, well, he doesn't see the downside to it. He doesn't see why or how somebody could use that against him or against me or against our family. So educate the people that you know and love. Enable and monitor your privacy settings. I say monitor it because, you know what, I threw all of those bits to protect all my stuff on LinkedIn. I was feeling pretty good, and then I decided to do this quick talk, you know, what can I find on somebody in 10 minutes? And I decided to go ahead and do it on myself from an unauthenticated browser, and I went into LinkedIn, and I saw myself, I'm like, holy shoot, I'm sorry, there's kids in the room, holy cow, look at all the stuff that's out there. I thought I turned on all those bits. Well, I had, but it's LinkedIn's data, right? So they decided to open it back up. So you have to monitor your stuff. You have to go back and go, is it still protected? Okay, cool. Understand the risks of using each service. Location-based services, Recon-ng has a neat module in there called pushpin. Pushpin, you put a virtual pin in a map, say this latitude and longitude, my kid's school, my place of work. Show me all the tweets, Instagram photos, and other things that have a geographic tag in that place. And then it'll pop it up, and you can see who's tweeting or doing other things from that location. It's pretty interesting to see who's tweeting during the middle of the day. Then the thing is, if this works for you, these are suggestions. You know your social profile and what you want to get out of it much better than I do. If it works for you, make it more challenging for me to figure out that you are you. You know, if you have accounts for work, don't use the same usernames on sites like WebBreacher. Don't use WebBreacher. But for you, don't pick the same usernames across multiple sites. Organize things. Separate things. These things I use for work. I'm going to use this one name, and then I'm going to use something else. Now, is it 100%? Absolutely not. But it gets you a little bit more secure. Don't use the same picture on all your sites. It's easy to find it. And most of all, limit the geo-tracking. When you enable the track my location, when you're checking in on Facebook, when you're checking in on these other things, and you're posting the latitude and longitude of where you are, that opens up a lot of risk for you. And let's face it, this whole talk is about risk. A lot of us in our jobs, we try to mitigate risk for our companies. But you don't realize that you make risk-based decisions in your lives, in your personal lives, all the time. This talk is about mitigating the risk that's being posed to you and your families. So, here's my information. There's Recon-ng and there's MindMap, xmind.net. That's the end of my talk. I'll take any questions I have. I don't know. Well, there's no talks after this, so I've got a couple of hours. Yes, sir.
Let's go legal.
Yes.
Because you can actually find information about whether a person's been arrested in one of those Google searches.
Yep.
How far can you go down that rabbit hole?
Okay. So the comment was, let's talk about legal. There's a ton of information about you that I didn't, or not about you, but about other people, about whether they've been put in jail, speeding tickets, other things that could be very interesting for you to pull up. Now, it's not, so there's this whole stalking law, right? There are stalking laws out there. There's doxing laws, where if you do an open source profile like this with the intent or to actually execute it, now I'm not a lawyer, so don't quote me on this stuff, but if you use that information for evil, then that's breaking the law. If you use this for other purposes, like research purposes or educational purposes, that's different. So within your company, excellent. So can you make hire fire decisions based upon this? My answer is no. I'm not a lawyer. You need to talk to your legal department. But I would say that one of the things, and I'm not going to get into that whole, well, you know, this law says this, but you have to apply the same rules to everybody. So if you're going to go ahead and do open source intelligence gathering against one person, you kind of need to do it against everybody. And that can be very time consuming, even with the tools that I showed you there. So talk to your legal department, because if you don't apply the rules evenly, then you're setting yourself up for a problem. Yes, sir. So when it comes to tracking the movements of people, you mean the geo-tracking and location-based information? Yeah, so tracking movements, if you do that via like putting a GPS tracker on their car, yeah, probably. But what we're doing, well, all I'm doing is harvesting information that you have pushed out onto the internet for anybody in the world to see. So people in Moldova, people in Hawaii, they can see this and aggregate this information too. So I'm going to say no. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty comfortable saying no. Yes, ma'am. Does Facebook aggregate likes and stuff in your profile? So the very famous person said that if you're not paying for a service, you are the service. Facebook, nobody pays for it. So absolutely, they most likely, there's a camera over there. They most likely harvest and generate information, metadata, profiles on every single thing that you put into their system. There's metadata in pictures, yes. Metadata is the information about the picture. So if you tweet something and then it came from your Samsung Galaxy S5, in the metadata of that picture it says, hey, I was taken from a Samsung Galaxy S5 from this location, and yes, that information can be aggregated or culled. Yeah, you know, it sounds like you might have some extra questions. I'm happy to talk to you afterwards. But think about this. If the data is out on their server, you have no control over it. When you delete something and it removes it from the public eye, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's removed from their systems or removed from their backups or removed from other things. They still may have access to it, or law enforcement may still also. Yes, sir.
So, speaking about Facebook and speaking about information that we cannot control, I'm sure that as security guys, we're all more or less aware of what we're making public and what we're trying to keep private, right? Now, what's your advice about stuff that's out of our control? For example, our phone number, you know? I once made a fake account on Facebook to test something, and I used my wife's phone number. I'm from Romania, and all the details that I used were from the US. So fitbitgenerator.com and everything from there, right? Okay, now all the contacts that Facebook recommended were my wife's friends. Why? Because those people sent over to Facebook their phone books, which had my wife's number in it. So basically, our data is being sent over to third parties by our friends. And there's absolutely nothing we can do about it besides breaking their faces.
That's a different website. So yes, and that's the world that many of us live in right now, is that we have pushed so much data, and our friends, our neighbors, our governments, our stores have released so much data about us into the world, into the internet, that our efforts to remove ourselves, remove our social media profiles, remove information about us won't ever be able to purge all of the data out there. Just by living and operating in the society that we live in, stuff's about us. You go to church or temple or a mosque or something like that, they may put your picture in there. And Google, Facebook, and other places have great facial recognition capabilities. So your face can be tied to you even though you have no Facebook profile. There are absolutely things like that. And it's beyond our control. So it's risk-based decision, right? I mean, you can change the way you look. You cannot go out in public, which with Amazon Prime makes it a lot easier to do. But, I mean, it really is about limiting what's out there. Your phone number has never, ever been private, even though people think it is. Where you live, it's not private data. It might be harder to get, but it's not private. Was there another question? Yes, sir.
Yeah. Speaking of where you live, real estate purchases are public records.
They are, and actually, it's one of the coolest. So one of the things I did at work was I did a profile on some executives saying, hey, what is the profile, what does their social media, what on the internet shows about them? And one of the things I found was that one of them had an apartment or condo in a building that was in a vacation area, and it was a second home. I was like, oh, that's neat. It's on this apartment. That's cool. I found it in a tax record, which they couldn't control. And I was like, well, I wonder if. And so I went to a real estate page, and on a real estate page, I found a like unit. And that real estate agent had not only published inside pictures of what the floor plan looked like, but they published the architectural diagrams for what that apartment looked like, the sizes of the rooms, how the rooms flowed and stuff. And I thought, well, do I not have the floor plan for the apartment above them that my target's in? Yeah. So sometimes we go to other places and make those jumps to get information about our targets. Yeah, there's tons of information out there. Anybody else? Yes, sir. So for Recon-ng, that's an excellent question. Recon-ng does require for some of its modules API keys that cost money, which is a way. API keys are those authentication pieces that say, hey, website, I've paid, give me this stuff that I want. The answer is no, sir. My profiles, my profiler script, and all of the Recon-ng modules that I write are 100% free. You don't need any keys. There's no barrier to usage aside from just using the tool. And also, no. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much. I'll be up here if you have any more questions.